We're going to be checking out this video called All the Ways Car Dependency is Wrecking Us, okay? And this is by the channel Ray Delahanty City Nerd. Links down below for this. So the reason that I want to watch this video with you guys is because the last few days I've realized how much car dependency really affects people here because it's been affecting us, okay? So Friday or Saturday, okay? Amy goes to work. Car doesn't start. We're trying to figure it out, trying to get a jump start. It dies right away, this and that. So the entire day was dealt with trying to deal with that, okay? So then the next day, or no, when she gets off work, she gets a ride. Figure out it's the alternator. So then, you know, and it's like trying to get rides is a real pain because we live like 12 minutes from town. You know, we have a group of friends that live in town, and but they're busy and this and that, and we can't always, you know, but they're helpful. They got us a ride and everything. Everybody else I know is over an hour away. It's just a pain in the butt, you know. And then we're supposed to go to a birthday party. Well, on the way there, the birthday party got rescheduled till the next day. I was already over close to my mom's house at that point. Amy was already at work waiting 3 hours, 4 hours early before her shift started. She was there at 1. She didn't have to start work until 5. By this point, I just ended up staying at my mom's all day. Amy just sat there and waited and waited and waited, done her work, this and that. And then later in the night, then we went and picked her up. Like my stepdad and me and my stepdad went. He drove, right? He gave us a ride and everything. And then, of course, then the next day, I went to the birthday party. That was supposed to be the day before. And just trying to deal with rides, you know, and it cost, you know, because you have to pay the person gas money and their time. I have no problem with that. It's how it goes. It just sucks when it affects a person, you know. So anyways, the alternator was junk. I ended up fixing it yesterday. I bought the part, you know, it came in the mail and everything, and you know, we're finally back driving. But it sucks that we have to have a car. Like literally, when a car breaks in this country, your life breaks in this country, basically. Anyways, enough rambling. We're going to check this video out, guys. I just wanted to, you know, to find a video to showcase. I am aware, you know, if you live in a big city like New York City and stuff like that, you probably can get by without a vehicle. But for the majority of the people that live in the rural areas, you know, and when you're 12 minutes in a car ride to the closest town, it's going to take you a few hours to walk. I think it took us like 3 hours. We had to walk one time. That's another thing. Our car broke down late at night. Couldn't get a ride. Had to walk 3 hours. Oh boy, did that suck. I'm telling you what, guys. Anyways, can you tell that this car thing is triggering me? All right, enough rambling. We're actually going to go to the video. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. I really do.
All the bad things with ironclad research coming up.
On.
Cars can be
There
useful
we go.
for certain things, but the way we've become dependent on them and designed everything around them, well, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, it's literally killing us. And I'm going to enumerate all the bad things with ironclad research coming up next. And I'm not even going to do my usual intro thing today because I'm just in a mood. Viewer suggested topics are always welcome.
He says, I'm just in a mood. I feel that. I feel it.
Etc. And I do get tons of comments that are along the lines of, City Nerd, in your videos you always talk about how car dependency is bad, but only in a tangential way when you're doing like a list of the top 10 Major League Soccer venues. Can't you just make one standalone video that sums all of it up that I can send to my weird Trumpy uncle so he can understand why I'm obsessed with all this stuff? So today you're gonna get what you asked for.
Nice.
And the foundation for this is gonna be a brand new peer-reviewed article. And it's called Car Harm, a global review of automobility's harm to people and the environment from the February 2024 edition of the Journal of Transport Geography. I mentioned this right at the top because number one, academic research is a tough business, and I want the people who worked on this to get their due. Number two, you can give them their due by going and reading their paper. It's actually highly readable for this kind of publication, and the graphics are shockingly good for something that appears in an academic journal. And three, it really is the best, most comprehensive, and obviously up-to-date paper I've seen on this topic. And because it is a peer-reviewed article, it includes extensive citations to back up everything. Now, I know you all, and I know that like less than 1% of you are actually going to go read this thing. And that's why this
Not gonna lie, I'm probably not gonna read that, guys. But like I said, the link to his video, the original video that we are reacting to, will be in my description. So if you guys do want to go read that, you can follow that link to go there to find the link that he's talking about and all that good stuff.
video exists. People barely read anything anymore, much less academic journals, but they watch YouTube videos. So I'm going to do what I usually do and deliver this excellent information with my usual gratuitous commentary. But honestly, if you want to quote anything here, go to the actual source. So the paper breaks down all the different harms caused by automobility into basically 19 different buckets, which intuitively seemed like too many, but when I actually went through it, every one of the 19 buckets was legit. They really are all discrete and important.
No, yeah, I got so much, you know, I mean, this is all, everything that, like parking, all of it. Like I can already envision all the problems with all of it for sure. I've experienced it and it sucks.
Ways that automobility negatively impacts our health and our lives. I'm going to be comprehensive and touch on all of these, but let's start with the most direct and obvious thing, which is crashes. So the World Health Organization says crashes kill 1.3 million people per year, or about 3,500 people a day. I'm just trying to imagine what the global response would be if 10 to 20 passenger planes crashed every day, killing everyone on board. Because
if 10 to 20 passenger planes crashed every single day, killing everybody on board, not gonna lie, guys, my ass would not be going to the Netherlands next April. I'd be too scared. I'm already a little bit nervous, but if there was 20 or 30 dropping out of the sky every single day, nope. Absolutely not. Maybe I'll get on a boat and go across the ocean or something at that point. I don't even know.
that's roughly what this is. And remember, this is just accounting for fatalities. The number of people suffering permanently life-altering injuries and crashes is...
That's weird, though. He said it's basically the same thing as with the cars, though. It's the same analogy. So why am I so okay with getting in a car, though? I just thought about that. That's the actual statistics, but for cars. Very interesting. I'm going to go back a little bit because I was talking, and I know it annoys you guys when I interrupt in the middle of a sentence.
If 10 to 20 passenger planes crashed every day, killing everyone on board, because that's roughly what this is. And remember, this is just accounting for fatalities. The number of people suffering permanently life-altering injuries and crashes is much higher. The paper does allow that modern safety features have resulted in a trend where the number of crash fatalities has increased at a lower rate than the actual amount of driving, except in the US, where the crash fatality rate has recently spiked upward, which the authors attribute at least partially to American drivers' appetite for heavier, taller vehicles. Also in the traffic violence category, something I don't really think about, intentional violence. This can take all kinds of forms and is part of why so many public buildings seem to be designed like fortresses and have massive bollards in front of them. But also,
you know, there's a public building in Rochester, and it looks like it's like almost like a fortified fortress sort of thing. And it's like the Rochester Public Works Department or something. There's like a whole bunch of like official offices and stuff inside of there. That makes sense. That's why it's designed not too far off from this, actually. Little different, but yeah.
Be designed like fortresses and have massive bollards in front of them. But also, we don't talk about this much, and well, self-harm trigger warning, but people use their vehicles for things like intentionally crashing at high speed into a fixed object, or worse, an oncoming vehicle, or using them as carbon monoxide delivery systems. Really an unpleasant aspect of this, but really important, I think. Let's dive into the health category, which we're considering separate from traffic violence. This includes pollution, both from the exhaust that's generated from running motors and material abrasion, so things like tires and brake pads. So you get all kinds of gases that you really don't want to be anywhere near, especially not in the kinds of quantities that you get from vehicle exhaust.
And that's why I think a lot of cities in the Netherlands is actually healthier probably to breathe in the city because you're not going to have all that pollution and stuff. So it's going to be just nice being able to be in the middle of a city and not have all the noise pollution and also not have as much of the air pollution as well. It's going to be cool. It's going to be interesting and certainly a lot different than anything I've ever experienced before.
You get all the particulate matter from material abrasion, a lot of which is very small particles that are particularly dangerous since they travel through biological barriers so easily. And the paper
Yeah.
cites an estimate that up to
Formaldehyde.
90% of particulate matter in urban areas is traffic related. All of this stuff is associated with increased risk of respiratory and circulatory diseases, including cancer, and all kinds of neurological conditions. And the authors point out that while the transition to electric vehicles will likely reduce exhaust-related pollution, particulate matter will almost certainly get worse since the vehicles are heavier and therefore generate more material abrasion. Okay, so that's a big one. Noise is another.
I mean, yeah, more rubber and stuff would definitely be getting wore off the tires faster, I guess, if that's the reasoning behind it, and possibly brake pads, would maybe wear faster if it's a heavier vehicle. But I don't know though, because actually with electric vehicles, I think that the motor itself can like almost like downspin or something, to where it's not really necessarily using the brake power as much. It's like called regenerative braking or something like that. So I don't know exactly how true or whatever that necessarily is, like as far as would that actually have more particulate matter pollution or whatever he was saying, you know what I mean?
And automobility is the number one source of noise in urban areas.
Yeah, it
This
is.
includes propulsion noise, so the motors themselves, which is the more prevalent source at lower speeds, and rolling noise, meaning the contact between tires and pavement, which is the dominant source at higher speeds.
And it drowns everything out, so it makes it harder to hear people and this and that, and like you're not going to hear like the birds chirping and stuff like that in the cities here like you would in the Netherlands or Europe, in a lot of places in Europe. I'm just saying Netherlands specifically just because I know a lot more about the Netherlands than other European countries, just because that's the one that I've been doing like my main focus on with my learning. But yeah, it's gonna drown everything out. It's just gonna be like a background hum, background noise that just kind of isolates everything from nature. I don't even know.
So again, electric vehicles aren't going to be the magic bullet. Health impacts of increased noise: high blood pressure, tinnitus and hearing loss, anxiety, stress, sleep disturbance, and cognitive impairment. Remember, cities aren't noisy, it's cars that are noisy. Next,
Yeah.
light pollution and thermal pollution. I'm talking about extremely bright illumination that's required for roadways and parking lots, which interferes with your sleep quality and your overall health. And thermal, I'm talking about urban heat island effects, expanses of pavement that exacerbate heat waves and all the terrible health impacts that come with those kinds of events, especially for vulnerable populations. Here's another: sedentary travel. I'm not an evolutionary biologist, but I assume our species evolved over millions of years using our feet to get from place to place, and being conveyed by a motorized chariot is fairly new in the large scheme of things. Sedentary behavior
Yeah.
increases risks of all kinds of cardiovascular diseases, while people who walk and bike regularly experience improved physical and mental health.
That's why people in countries that do bike and walk a lot more generally have a higher life expectancy than the United States.
Of particular concern, children have become increasingly sedentary in their travel. In the US, the proportion of children who walk or bike to school has decreased from about 48% in the
Very small
1970s
amount.
to about 11% in 2017. Probably
Yeah.
hasn't increased in the last 7 years. Next is social isolation due to car dependency, and that kind of isolation is
Social isolation, guys. Don't even get me started. Don't even get me started on some social isolation. I feel that.
linked to increased risk of things like cardiovascular disease and cognitive deterioration. And
Yeah.
this is another one where children are particularly impacted. Compared to kids who walk or
Sucks.
bike, children who are conveyed from place to place in cars are found to be less connected to their neighborhoods, have fewer opportunities for outdoor play and exploration, and don't gain the experience they need to become competent at assessing risk and just becoming independent in general. Okay,
And it's probably half the reason why I'm so screwed up in the head. And I'm trying to rewire my brain to be more like the way it should be and not be the way that it is because of the American propaganda and the environment that I've been forced to be in, if that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, I can't wait to get to Europe. It's only going to be a couple weeks, but it's going to be like, it's going to be so insanely different than here. It's going to be refreshing and it's going to be sad coming back. You know what I mean? But I have to come back. This is my home. I have my life here and stuff, you know. But I'll go back and visit again for sure.
let's get into our
For
next
sure.
super fun category, environmental damage. The first bucket here is a very big one, carbon emissions. If you don't already know, transportation does account for a significant portion of global CO2 emissions, and 70% of that
Yeah.
transportation number comes from road vehicles. And it's not just tailpipe, it includes full life cycle. So production,
Dang.
disposal,
I know you guys every now and then, you know, there's a video or something that shows like a parking lot over here and everybody's like, wow, that's insane, you know, this and that. But I mean, did you see the size of this one, guys? I've been to parking lots this big. I've seen parking lots this big. Yeah, not here. Closer to bigger cities like Chicago, you know, Cincinnati, Detroit, that sort of thing. Indianapolis, you know, but yeah.
cycle. So production, disposal, and really all the infrastructure that's required to even make automobility work in the first place. Next bucket, pollution and resource extraction. So oil, obviously, but also mining for the different kinds of metals used in vehicle manufacturing has massive air, water, and soil quality impacts.
And this is where the electric vehicle pollution and the environmental impact comes in. A lot of people's like, oh yeah, electric vehicles so much better than gas. Well, sure, it is in a lot of ways, but also, you know, there's a lot of mining taking place to get the stuff that they need to make those batteries, and there's a lot of pollution involved in the process of making said batteries. So it's like, you know, it's just like how do you want to look at it, basically.
Manufacturing has massive air, water, and soil quality impacts, and electric vehicles require even more mined material than internal combustion engine vehicles do.
Yep.
Another
Yep.
bucket under the environmental category, tires. Not biodegradable. You ever see those junkyards full of used ones? Yeah, those aren't going to disintegrate organically. The paper cites a study that says about 35% of microplastics that are released into the ocean are from tires and road markings. All of this stuff makes its way into the runoff, and it is all very bad. There's another bucket for
Humans are a cancer on this earth. Just saying. I love humans. I am a human. You guys are humans. I love you. But let's be real, guys. We are a cancer on this earth if you look at the big picture. It's sad.
other kinds of pollution, like the road salt we use for de-icing streets in the winter. I hate to break it to you, but massive amounts of sodium chloride in our runoff is not good for freshwater ecosystems, and oil spills, not at all optimal for our marine ecosystem.
Okay, then what is okay, so instead of using sodium chloride, what if you use the same kind of salt that comes out of the ocean, like ocean salt? That way when it goes back in the ocean, it's not causing a problem. Wouldn't it just be that easy, right? I mean, am I missing something? Right?
For our marine ecosystems. There's also a land use bucket, so the way we allocate land to our roadway system. Collisions with wildlife are just a piece of this. More troubling is the way our roadway network fragments habitats and impacts.
Then why don't they have the wildlife bridges like they have in the Netherlands? There's a lot of stuff that the Netherlands does that they could be doing here and actually should be doing here to make things better. You know what I mean? I think the United States really does need to take a good look at Europe. And, because there's a lot of things that Europe's doing a lot better. Europe is passing us up. Maybe right after World War II, sure, sure. The United States may have been the place to be. I get it. But you know what? Europe just got devastated by a war. So it's like that's the one time that like it was great to be here was well of no shit, it makes sense. Everything in Europe was decimated. Of course it was better to come here. But guess what? Times have changed. Europe rebuilt their stuff back up. They built it better than it was before actually. Meanwhile, America is just I don't even know what they're doing here. You know what I mean? It's just insane. They're not making wildlife bridges, not that I know of.
Biodiversity, and the way that low-density development patterns associated with automobility lead to loss of habitat, not to mention exacerbating natural disasters like flooding and wildfires. Okay, everything I've talked about so far is terrible, and it's almost absurd to say that any one of these things is worse than another because they're all bad. But in
Yeah.
a minute, I'm going to get to a special kind of badness, which is all the ways that automobility erodes the very fabric of society. And just so this whole video isn't just a huge bummer, I'm going to talk about solutions and what you, as a conscientious viewer of YouTube videos, can do in your own community. And I'm not even going to do my usual call to action here. You know where to find me, and I'd rather just get back on topic. I mentioned that this paper has above average graphical content. For example, this one connects all the different externalities of automobility to all the different kinds of harm we've been talking about. And I'm gonna finish with what they call social injustices, which I think is a fair term to use, but spelled out really means all the ways in which the benefits and harms of automobility are just not equally distributed. This manifests in all kinds of ways when it comes to traffic violence, like the fact that drivers are less likely to yield to black pedestrians than they are to white pedestrians, and that cars are often
Wait,
designed.
what? Where did this study so racial bias in driver yielding behavior at crosswalks? Why is there so many racist people trying to run black people over? Where did they do the study at? I mean, this is clearly not going to be the entirety of the United States, right? I mean, surely it's just certain areas where there's just a bunch of racist assholes. I don't know where they got these numbers at, but
Kinds of
I don't know.
ways when it comes to traffic violence. Like the fact that drivers are less likely to yield to black pedestrians than they are to white pedestrians, and that cars are
But I yield to whoever. Like I don't really I don't know. I don't know. I don't know.
often designed for a typical male anatomy, to the point where when a woman is involved in a car crash, she is 47% more likely to be seriously injured than a man. I'm not even trying to do
How?
identity politics here. I'm just pointing out facts. Another bucket is
Well, that's fine, but I wish you would explain it. Like what exactly, you know what I mean? What exactly is the reasoning that would cause a female to suffer more harm? I mean, the only thing different anatomically is chest area, obviously. So maybe that, something with that, the impact or something. Yeah, I don't know. That's interesting. I wish he would have kind of like mentioned a little bit of like why.
identity politics
And
here.
maybe I missed it. Correct me if I'm wrong.
I'm just pointing out facts. Another bucket is inaccessibility, and this comes in two varieties. One readily apparent one, which is that a built environment designed around cars has all kinds of barriers and hazards baked into it that especially impact people with mobility issues and
Yeah.
vision and hearing impairments. But the other less obvious one is that automobility itself limits accessibility for people who can't afford or choose not to drive. I like the way the paper puts it. Automobility promises the annihilation of distance, but prioritizes some people's journeys at the expense of others. Rather than dissolving space, the car economy redistributes it, systematically favoring people who choose to drive, and you can just file that under gratuitous commentary. The next
Yeah, because if you don't drive, you're screwed unless you live in, like I said, New York City or like certain places. Like maybe not just specifically massive cities like that, you know. I mean, I'm sure there's other places that you can sort of, you know, get around and walk a few places, but for the most part, everything's so spread out that, you know, even in a car, you're driving 10 minutes across town just to go to a store, and then, you know, 10 minutes across town to go to a different one. And, you know, so imagine walking that distance.
Bucket is something I feel like I talk about on this channel constantly, and it's car dependent places. Automobility itself is inseparable from a whole philosophy of land use that separates residential, retail, employment centers, schools, and public services
Yeah.
geographically, resulting in cities and suburbs where the car is the solution to the problem that the car itself helped to create in the first place. Next, our roadway
Yeah.
system. Streets are public and they're supposed to be for everyone, but in practice, cars consume far more street space than any other mode. The study states that one person in a car consumes roughly the space of 20 people in a transit vehicle, which honestly feels like a very conservative estimate, particularly in the US where vehicle sizes just keep increasing. And that's just for vehicles that are actually in motion. The paper actually has a completely different bucket just for parking, which is space that's completely useless to anyone not driving. It's usually provided for quote unquote free, but the cost of
Yeah.
the parking.
Hold on. So the thing with the parking, there's a lot of things with the parking, but one thing is the massive parking lots that you have. Even if you do have like a little area of town where you have like different like, you know, like a restaurant here, grocery store there, whatever. Everything has its own massive parking lot, so that alone separates and segregates everything into like its own little pocket. Like nothing's close by so much, unless it's in like a shopping center where you'll have like one building with, you know, five, six, seven different stores on it, you know, but that's only in certain areas of cities and stuff. And then the parking too, it's like, you know, I went to Chicago one time, and trying to find parking in Chicago, never going to do that again. Never. I mean, you're driving around block after block after block after block after block after block trying to even try to find a parking garage or something. You finally find a spot that says $30 to park there. What looked like, you know, up to 6 hours, whatever. You park it, you come back a couple hours later, you can't leave unless you give them like $75 or something crazy. It's like misleading the way the signs are, and there's hidden fees. I don't. Mm, I'm getting triggered, guys. I don't like this. I hate the car dependency. I'm telling you.
It's usually provided for
Sorry.
quote unquote free, but the cost of the parking is really just rolled into the prices you pay in the store itself, regardless of whether you drove there or not. So if
Yeah, free parking. Yeah, this. I was talking about like parking garages in a city, but yeah, I mean these kind of parking places are free, you know. But yeah.
If you took transit or walked or biked to the store, you get the privilege of subsidizing parking for everyone who drove there. Short editorial. I recently made the mistake of walking into a Walmart without having drove there because I don't drive anywhere. Well, the greeter wouldn't let me enter the store with my backpack, which I always have with me because I'm generally biking everywhere and I need to carry my stuff. So I asked the greeter if they had any lockers where I could lock up my bag, which is something they do have at the Walmarts in Mexico. And what they told me was, no, you just have to go lock up your bag in your car. And when I said I didn't drive there, that just didn't compute at all. So the upshot was I had to leave the store. I can't even remember why I wanted to
Wow.
walk into a Walmart in the first place, and I'm definitely not going back. Next bucket, how.
Wow, that is. Yeah, because around here they don't like, because there's a lot of people that shoplift and stuff like that. They don't really like you to. I mean, I've seen people, you know, carry their backpacks or whatever, you know, on their back in stores like that, but they always, most of the time it seems like the employees are like keeping an eye on and watching them, you know, the secret security person that's dressed like a regular person, following you around the store, just trying to blend in, looking like a regular shopper, but he's actually like staring at you, making sure you're not stuffing anything in your backpack. It's a whole thing. So yeah, that sucks. He wasn't able to get his groceries or whatever he was going there for. He wasn't able to just get it. Like that's, if I was the person at the door, the greeter, I would have been like, man, it's cool. Just put your bag right here. I'll watch it for you while you go shopping, man. No problem. You know what I mean? Like to just turn a person away, that's just crazy. People don't have any humanity left anymore.
Going
You
back.
guys do. You guys are amazing. I mean, I absolutely amazing. Couldn't ask for a better audience base.
Next bucket, housing. We're in a housing
Oh,
crunch, and the
housing.
space that's required to support
This
automobility
video.
contributes directly to the scarcity of space for housing. Parking is often bundled into the price of housing, which creates a particular inequity and hardship for people who don't drive. And the paper points out that the amount of space that one off-street parking stall consumes is about the same as the average living space per person in countries like China, South
Jeez.
Korea, and Spain. And this next one is super interesting. It's the inequitable allocation of time spent in traffic congestion or searching for parking, and the perverse fact that as more people drive, all of these problems get worse. The paper includes this factoid from Ivan Illich's book, Energy and Equity. The typical American male spends 4 out of their 16 waking hours either driving or earning the money they need to be able to afford to drive. 25% of your waking life, and that was
Yeah.
1974. I'd hazard to guess it's worse now. And the last
Yeah.
one, bucket 19, the financial burden of owning a car, necessitated by the sheer prevalence of car-dependent places. And I've talked about the cost.
And having to spend unexpected money on an alternator, having to spend a bunch of gas money to get rides. It cost me probably, let me think here. In the last 3 days, not having a vehicle probably cost me $250. Between the alternate, maybe almost 300 between the alternator and gas money and stuff. Yeah. Craziness.
Cost of car ownership, which I think people systematically underestimate in a whole other video. Finally, this isn't a focus area of the paper or this video, but they do provide a list of interventions that can be undertaken to counteract all these harms. Congestion pricing, or decongestion pricing, or whatever you want to call it. Reduced parking, including eliminating parking mandates. More car-free spaces and things like open streets. Reducing traffic speeds. To me, this is all just scratching the surface, but all this really comes down to evolving our cities in such a way that there are more neighborhoods where it's not only possible to live without a car, but it's preferable to do so because you experience such a massive improvement to your quality of life. And it's easy to be a doomer about this stuff, but I guarantee you, in your city, there are organizations working on making your community more livable and less car dependent. And people
Yeah, I mean, certain places are certain. They're definitely trying. I've noticed in the last couple of years, certain places are for sure. And Carmel, Indiana is one of them. And I really want to get down there sometime. It's about an hour drive from me. And I really, really, really want to go down there and check it out. It's one of the most cycling friendly places. I mean, it's still going to be segregated because it was originally built here, and obviously it's here in America. So it's the same as any other city here. But somewhere along the way, they redone, like they took out like a train railway or something that went through the middle of town, kind of turned it into like walkable bike lanes or like walkable areas, shops, stuff like that. So I think the downtown area is pretty walkable. I don't know that you can live there. So I think somebody that they would still have to drive from outside of town into town. I don't know for sure, but I want to check it out sometime.
People do always ask, hey YouTuber, you're really good at describing all the problems, but you never tell me what the answers are. And my number one answer is every city is different, and the best thing
Yep.
you can do is get plugged in with your local safe streets and or abundant housing advocacy groups. They will be more than happy to put you on a mailing list or connect you to social media accounts where you'll get updates on opportunities to get involved in local projects and make your voice heard. And as always, there's strength in numbers. So get connected and get involved. It's easy to do. You just actually have to want to do it. And that's all I've got. Thanks for joining, and thanks.
So it sucks not living in town though. You know what I mean? Like if I lived in town, I would certainly get a bike and just be riding around, But like I said, there's nothing here. There's a pizza place a couple places down, and that's it. I can walk there. I usually don't, it's expensive. So I usually, maybe once every couple months or something, I might get some pizza there. But usually we just have to drive into town to get groceries. It takes us 12 minutes to drive there. I don't know what it would take on a bike, but yeah, this was a good video, guys. If I said anything wrong or was incorrect, I guess let me know, definitely. And thanks for watching with me. Do me a favor and hit like and subscribe. It certainly helps like so much more than you know. I appreciate it and everything. It helps the video spread and the algorithm and you know, all that super fun, awesome stuff. You guys have a super fun, awesome day, and I will certainly catch you in the next one. Take care. Bye.